Are we live? Okay, cool. Is there anybody watching? Oh, cool. Well, welcome to the OnyxPath Art and Design panel. I'm your host, Mike Chaney, the art director for OnyxPath. And other folks, please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Maria Cabardo. I work with Mike Chaney for the design department, production department of OnyxPath, and I've been working with them for a while now. So, welcome everyone.
I accidentally pressed the mute button on my mic.
You got one of those fancy mics.
It gets out of the way. But I'm Priscilla. Mic issues aside, and I'm a freelance illustrator who has worked primarily on Exalted, but I've done some stuff for V20 and Scion. Some other things, I'm sure. I did a little bit of stuff for Pugmire and a scattering of other things. Probably, yeah. I don't actually remember anymore, to be honest.
Oh,
well. Yeah.
Anyway, that's us. Rich is apparently playing, was it the playtest for Anima, which should be very exciting to hear about. So if anybody has any questions, start slinging them. Otherwise, we're going to talk about my dogs.
I want to know more about your dogs because I love dogs.
Well, Maria, do you want to talk a little bit about what you do, I guess, on a day-to-day basis?
I guess I can. Well, I've worked with OnyxPath for a while. I started with Exalted with them, so I worked on design and some art directing, and then last year I started working with Mike, and he has assigned me work for V6, I think, V5. I'm sorry, I forget the numbers. I was going to say V8, but yeah. So I've been working with him on art directing, and I'm also production support for the other lines, like whatever Mike. Sometimes because Mike has a lot to do, so I help him out on other stuff. Like I think I've also worked on They Came From, what is that, Mike? I forget.
Might be Beyond the Grave.
Yes, I worked on that line as well. And what else have I done? I do a lot of web stuff for them, and I also right now I'm art directing for them. So
I think you did the Essence logo.
Yes, I worked on the Essence.
Oh, nice.
Logo. Yes, I worked on the new one. So that's cool. I also did some, me and Mike worked on the brochure. So that's another thing that I worked on. And it's actually a lot of fun. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've known Rich since, and actually Mike since pre-OnyxPath days, right? I mean, you guys were working you guys were still working at White Wolf, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've done a lot. I freelanced a lot for them, for Rich especially. So.
Mm-hmm. What sort of freelance?
I do design work. I do design work.
Design.
Yeah, I do a lot of design work. I'm not an illustrator, thank God. I work with them, and I usually ask them to do things that I don't want to do, like drawing stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I make their lives hell when I ask them to make changes. Sometimes I turn them away. But for the most part, it's a great job. I mean, I love my work. It's such a joy to work with creative people, and the nice thing about OnyxPath is that they're, you know, they're very easy to work with as a client, you know, because mainly because probably most of the products that they do it's theirs, it's their own stuff. So if you go through approvals and everything, you just go through the main people and then you're good, as opposed to having to work for someone else who doesn't own the products that you're working with, because then you go through a series of approvals. So that's been very easy. Yeah. And the genre is very fun. Yeah.
I've done a little bit of stuff for like the Fantasy Flight Star Wars things. And like there's usually the art director who does, you know, notes and revisions. And then like 6 months later, the licensor will come back and be like, can you make these changes? So
right. It's the project that never end.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
The first question we have up here is for Priscilla, which is your favorite piece you did for Exalted?
The piece of the Scarlet Empress.
The one
handing
on the
down
back
the chop to, yeah, it's on the back of, I think, the Realm. I want to say
the core book,
or maybe Dragon Blooded, Yeah,
I think it's on the Dragon Blooded core.
So that one probably. I just really like how it turned out. Turns out I like backlighting female characters, especially with her red hair. It gets all nice and glowy, and just turned out fun.
Even though I did art for Exalted way back in the day, we're not going to talk about any of mine. Let's see.
Why not?
Oh God. But A, because it's fill-in. Where somebody bails.
Oh.
Folks. And that's when I come in and basically hack my way through heavily shadowed anime, which is awful. I am not an anime artist at all. Let's see. Next question is, what all is involved in the layout phase? That's actually a good question. Like I said, when we do a new book, it's basically by the time it gets to layout phase, generally we have an idea what we're going to do. Like for the most books we have, like Chronicles of Darkness, the 20 lines, they're pretty much based on the originals. We just basically pull what we like from what and kind of go from there. And then the newer lines, you just kind of sit there for a couple of days with the finished text and kind of, you know, hit it with a hammer until you see something you like. But basically what it is like I said, initially you set up your templates, font selection, stuff like that. Try to think of a theme you want to go with. Like when I did the Trinity Continuum books, the idea was basically the old ones had a lot of stuff in them and borders and stuff, and I wanted to go much lighter, almost textbook look. So it's, you know, airier, so you can breathe when you read it. And then you just kind of, you know, drop the text in and go to town. Some people take a few days to lay books out. Some people take a couple of weeks. It just depends. But once you do it a couple of times, you get a feel for it. You know, kind of the ebb and flow. It's kind of like, you know, swimming or surfing or something like that. You know, you just kind of get into a groove and just go.
What do you find is the harder part about dealing with and layout? Placing like tables or side panels, or, you know, the art itself?
Art itself is actually pretty easy, since I basically we have a formula. Basically, it was art is either one every 5 to 6 pages. So usually, if you can find the spot where one goes, you can kind of, you know, page out like, oh, here we go, here's the next one. Or B5, you have to actually read and find out what's going on, which is great on those big 400-something page books. No, with the new InDesign stuff, the tables are so much more easier to do now. As long as the tabs are in there properly, you can just convert it to a table, do the shading in there. Sidebars are still pretty much the same way you did them when you were doing layout stuff, which is copy and paste. And
I think it's one of the hardest books to design and lay out compared to other books that I've done, you know, only because each chapter each chapter is not really the same. So there's always like the characters, or there's the rule, there's a story. So unlike other books, you know, that they're a little bit more consistent, just because of the subject matter, and because there's like so many elements. Like there's a map, there's weapons, there's the characters, So there's the tables, for me, that's pretty hard to do because it's very challenging, but I'm learning from Mike because he's got like his InDesign like rules, like kind of down. So it's really cool that I learn from him, especially when he does the templates. Because everybody has different ways of doing things, but um, it's always good to know what is out there and you learn. Because really there's so many ways you can do one thing. It's like Photoshop. Some people do Photoshop one way. You can figure out how to do all these other stuff on Photoshop, and then you'll find out that the other person would be doing the same thing but using different commands, right? So there's like a million ways. I used to say there's a million ways to tell a story, so I'm thinking there's also a million ways to do your files. But if you're working with someone, it's always good to have a standard one so that you don't go kind of, it saves so much time, especially if you're in a hurry. And I think, again, it's to learn the rules and then in order for you to break the rules kind of thing. So it's always good to have structure. So for me, that's always helpful. So even though role-playing games are like just role-playing games, I still have to meet like a commercial designer who does ads and commercial work to I challenge you to do a
It's
role-playing book.
hard to switch gears on that stuff.
Huh?
It's hard to switch gears from just doing a book to doing something else too. I mean, going from doing just a book to doing the brochure
Right.
is night and day because you have to go okay, I'll just go boom, 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 page. The brochure, you got to basically go, you got to pair the right image with the right text. You got to basically space everything out so it makes sense. You got to, because you're trying to communicate a whole bunch of stuff in like 1 or 2 pages.
Right. And you have to learn to match the artwork as well. It's like, because when you read a book, it's like, it's like a movie, it's like film where every time each screen relates to the rest of the movie. And so in a book, each page sort of like builds and forms the whole book itself. So they kind of have to go, they have to kind of be consistent. And at the same time, you get all these different artwork from people, all different styles and all different medium, and all different colors. And you have to make them work together so that it doesn't look all different styles and all, so because the book itself is one unit, right? So you still have to make all of that kind of go with the flow. So I think that's one of the biggest challenge. And if you're not used to doing it, it's really it could be very overwhelming and confusing because it's not just one thing you're dealing with. There's so many different parts. So like with Mike, I know that he's like so quick and fast because he's shown me some of this. I've seen some of the stuff he's done. So it's like, but for regular people who are just going to do, let's say if you work for a publishing company and you do art books, totally completely different book, I think, right, Mike? It's not like, I think it's more complicated and it's hard. I mean, I also did comic books. So I've done comic books, and that's like one of the easiest things to do because you just slap the panels.
Yeah. Like comic artists already do all of the layouts.
I know, it's all there. So you just have to design like maybe 5 or 4 pages. So
I've done the things that have taken me the longest to do are usually the art books. Like we did was it the Changing Breeds art book, which actually we had to do director's commentary for, which was, I'm not even going to that, but me writing is a terrible idea. But it's basically just making sure all the captions kind of, everything looks cool. You can still see the art. You can still see the little explanations from the developers and the other artists and stuff like that. And it is way different than doing a plain old book.
Yeah, they're all different kinds of books, I mean, I would like to be able to do it's just really hard, it's very challenging. So I actually enjoy it because it really keeps you, sort of like on your toes and try to make it all work. Because you can't just slap things, you can't, because everything's connected. So if you screw up on one page, it kind of screws up the other page, and then you have to go back. And so you have to be really careful while you're doing it. I think the beginning is where you really have to be careful. But once you've set it straight, you got everything where it should be, then it's easy, right? I don't know when you start designing, Mike, if you start designing after you put the text there or before, because some, so I've met some designers who would design everything first and then put their text on it. So I usually put the text first and then I design afterwards. So
that's interesting to me.
I usually have an idea in my head and then I just drop it. But,
yeah.
okay. Moving on to the next one. Well, actually, one question that kind of ties in were the Exalted comics. So, did you work on any of the Exalted comics?
Me or Priscilla?
Yeah.
No.
I know the Udon guys did, but I can't remember who else worked on the non.
I am the exact opposite of a sequential artist. I'm very slow and I don't like drawing. So.
It's hard. I mean, I've seen some of those guys. The way it's like really making a movie, but drawing it.
Seriously,
make a lot of money.
Former roommate of mine was a comic artist. Like she did stuff for Marvel for a bit before she started doing her own thing, and she was always working, like all the time.
A lot of the artists I used to work with, they're always working all the time. That's why I dread calling them, because once I call them, it's like you're the only break they have. So you'll be there. Well, you'll be there for over an hour talking to these guys because you're the only connection they have in life. They're always working, as far as I know. Yeah, I don't think I'd be an illustrator. There's no way. I want to have a life.
Question is, how do you go about picking art pieces, artists for books? That's actually really good because like every book has a different. I can't say that. Certain artists' styles work for certain books. Like I'm trying to think. Like Chronicles of Darkness, basically, when we start doing those, we do them in black and white, and we do them in the duotone. When I do them, I basically try to pull artists that styles I've enjoyed in horror comics. As when Vertigo came out, like was it '92, with Death and all those comics and stuff like that, when we started doing that stuff, I just kind of gravitated toward that. So artists that have been in there, we had the guy from Hellblazer. Glenn Fabry actually worked on a Trinity cover for us that Maria got him to do way back in the day.
Okay, I don't even remember.
That was like 97, 98.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And then one of the interior artists actually worked for me on Hunter the Vigil first edition, which was really cool for me because he was actually referred to me by I originally tried to get Jean-Paul Leon, who's busy. So he referred me to oh god, I can't remember his name now. He did the Moon Knight comics and stuff like that. And anyway, he referred me to the guy who did Hellblazer, Sean. And it's like, oh, it's the weirdest thing in the world. But basically, it's whatever artists, like certain lines have certain things like Vampire 5e. Basically, they want very concept-y, airy kind of artwork or photographic, almost realistic artwork. Whereas opposed to something like Scion, I will go and let somebody, you can pretty much go nuts in there and basically do, standard fantasy style painting with lots of, lighting effects and, more room for stylization and stuff like that. But but that's one of the reasons you'll actually see a lot of the same artists working on the same books over and over again, is because once you actually get the look you want to try to repeat it again and again. They have that kind of cohesive feel, which is why you'll see Mike Gaydos doing the fulls for several vampire books in a row. Or you'll see basically the same 10 artists working on Exalted, simply because A, if they get it, and B, the look they kind of come up with is consistent and kind of hits those marks we have for it.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me when choosing an artist would be probably I'm schedule wise, for me, if they're dependable, that's the biggest plus for me. I mean, because I first of all, I used to always freelance. I'm a freelance art director, so it's kind of hard to not work with. It's hard if I don't work with people I can depend on, because if they don't give me work when I need it, my clients will not work with me again. So it's very important that they deliver when they say they should, and also the quality of work has to be at a certain standard. So because there's a lot of really good artists out there, there's a lot of really talented people out there that I've seen, young ones, older ones, famous ones, and you know soon to be famous, almost famous. But it really boils down to me into like, okay, are you dependable? If you say you're going to do what you're going to say, will it come in when we ask you to submit it? Will it be in at that day, or will it be in the next day? So those are things that are very important, because that can either make or break a book. If you have no heart and you have to wait last minute, then it becomes a little bit of a problem. However, um, for most art directors, I'm sure it's happened all the time when the deadlines always get compromised. So you kind of get, in time, your experiences help you then sort of like defend yourself against situations like this. So you always have to have a backup guy, so even if, because you always keep the ones that will give you the artwork like in one day, so you have those backup artists as well. It's kind of very scary to start with new artists, especially if you've been doing this for a long time, only because first you don't want to deal with the drama with the new artist. Second, you don't really know if they can make it, if they can, remember what you said, Priscilla, about you get changes like after 6 months. There's all these demands on commercial work. It's not fine arts. So if you're being paid to do something, you're going to be asked to do things you probably don't want to do. So those are things that I have to consider when I hire someone, because it's very scary. You hire all these people, but you don't know if they're going to deliver. And the only time they will is if A, you've worked with them in the past before and they did, and B, when it's actually there in your face and you can see it.
Yeah.
So, but the nice thing about Onyx is they have some flexibility for the most part with the people that they know, because they probably already trust them, that they know that they would get the stuff when they want it. And second, they're also very receptive to working with new people, which is great. So they're willing to take the risk, working with new artists, with young artists. So that's pretty awesome, because it's very scary to work with new people sometimes.
To some degree, you always kind of have to be looking out for new people too, don't you? Because I feel like sometimes you want to refresh, and then also sometimes artists just start becoming unavailable, or
right. That's true.
Kind of become successful.
Yes, they do, right?
So they don't work for tabletop RPGs anymore. They do movies.
A lot of the ones from Hunter the Vigil First Edition actually do comics and art for board games and concept art now for big companies. And I'm like, oh, great. Yeah. Oh, hey, Mike, how's it been? I haven't heard from you in 15 years. Yeah, you want to do some work? No, I'm busy.
Yeah, the schedule thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with writers as well. It's like first they're like, oh, yeah, work with me. And all of a sudden they've got like a big, like big film on Netflix or whatever. So you have to keep the roster fresh, I guess, at some point. I try to avoid it, but at some point you can't help it. You have to find new people regardless.
Let's see. Next one is, let's see, do you look to maintain the historical art style for the products or evolve to a new style blend? Are there themes, artists, media used as inspiration? Hang on, I have to maximize the window real quick. See, uses inspiration to trend. So for stuff like the 20th anniversary editions, basically whenever I do those books is basically I usually try to go back and pull as many of the classic artists who I'm still in contact with. Say for Changeling, Rich actually went back and talked to Tony Biarlitzy to get was remastered versions of all the full pagers. And I went and got was it Drew Tucker and a couple of other ones, John Cobb and several others to come back in and do artwork for it. So that's one of the big things I've been trying to do as I've been going along, is get Ron Spencer to try to come back in and do more artwork, because he used him so much back in the old days for the Werewolf Revised. And then after, things kind of went silent for a while, we didn't use him for much anything. So I try to bring back in as many of the older guys as possible when possible. But I also try to find artists who have similar styles. Is a good word for it. Like there's one artist I use that has this, it's sort of like a bizarre mashup between Drew Tucker and Mike Gatos art styles. And it's just one of those things like, okay, that will work for Vampire. Let's go with that. But as far as the other stuff goes, like I'm using Trinity as a constant example, but we tried to do. Since we're going from the mostly black and white to a full color look on this one. Basically, I tried to go for, like a better term, cinematic styling. I didn't want to go too stylized. I wanted everything to still have a kind of a sort of realistic look, so you can it's like you're more watching a TV program or a movie rather than looking at an art book type of look. And science, with the extent, we also do the same thing. But as far as media used for inspiration, pretty much any movie that's been out in the last 25 years, yes. Because I'm the guy who will watch the sci-fi made-for-TV movies. I'm also the guy who will watch all those horrible movies on YouTube. They're on those terrible channels, like Horror Central. I've watched 95% of that.
Do you have any particular ones that stand out?
As far as horror goes, there's one on Shudder has one right now called, was it Dark and the Wicked or something like that? It takes place in a country farm in like West Virginia or something. It is the most terrifying, scary thing that I've seen in a long time, and it's still low budget.
Oh.
So of course nothing beats the Hell House director's cut that they did. That is, or Hell House LLC. But I mean, as far as movies that that are inspiring to me for right now, I've watched, what was it, Army of the Dead on Netflix about 25 times now.
Oh wow!
It is just. I've seen people complain about, oh yeah, it has no logic, no plot. Throw that out the door. Just enjoy Dave Bautista blowing stuff up.
I know. Sometimes people are like, it's a zombie film.
It's a zombie film.
Find the meaning of life, or it's not going to give you a spiritual, enlightenment.
I mean, it's also a Zack Snyder film, so you can expect good visuals and maybe not a lot of sense in the plot.
Right.
I really wish I saw that before I did the Dystopia Rising art direction, because Dystopia Rising art direction for that was so focused from Fury Road.
Oh,
and I'm like, but I saw
that's a really good movie.
Army of the Dead. If I could probably put a little bit more, emphasis in there, the neon and stuff like that would be fun.
Yeah, but I thought Fury Road used a lot of the guys. Fury Road became Fury Road because of those artists who did their storyboards and their character development, I would think. Right?
I mean, Fury Road is also beautiful, so.
Yeah, it looks like what
still not about it.
Ashley Woods, Phil Hale, that kind of style, and even the coloring. So I thought, okay, I think this was very inspired by the artistic contributors, I think. That's my opinion, but I love that film. Awesome.
Oh yeah, and the black and white version is even better than the color.
I didn't see that one.
Black and white.
The chroma color one, or whatever they call it, the additional one. Oh, it's like looking at the Mike Mignola black and white Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula movie adaptation. Color's great. Black and white is so much better.
Yeah. Is that the Mike Mignola black and white Dracula adaptation real, or is that a?
No, it's real. Ivy did or Boone did it. Gorgeous. I only have the Comixology version of it because I can't afford the hard copy version of it. But it's so gorgeous. Let's see. Next question.
Yeah, his command of value is unparalleled. So, amazing.
Let's see. There's Meredith. Hi, Meredith. Let's see. And who worked on the Hunter video game? Was that at High Voltage? Oh God, I love that biker guy. Although, what was it when they came out with, what was it, Redeemer? That was the best video game ever. They actually finally a video game company who actually referenced things like, you know, Pentex, for God's sake, and Magadon. Oh, let's see. Okay, here's a question. How long do artists usually have to deliver?
Standard, right? Standard a month, 30 days.
30 days. If it's a Kickstarter book and I've got a little bit more wiggle on it, I'll give them, you know, however long they need, if I got wiggle room. Somebody like, I was trying to think of some of the people we get to cover sometimes, the really bigger names, like the guy who did the cover for the Trinity books. We would give him up to like 90 days to do them because he has so much stuff to work into those gigantic things. You guys are only seeing maybe about it at 35% size. Actually, actual size is like almost 2 feet tall.
And most of the time, I remember when I was doing comics, at least when I was working with the comic book artists, most of these guys are really fast. Even the slowest of the artists that I work with, if you really think about it, they're pretty fast. And the only reason why they're slow is because they have other projects that they're working on at the same time. So the 30 days is pretty much covers. I mean, I don't think any artist does the work for 30 days. I don't know, Priscilla, but if it takes
not consistently,
yeah,
certainly,
because that's a long time. I know,
yeah.
Right? That doesn't work
Unless there's like 10 pieces maybe, and it's just the entire bulk of the work.
And then, you know, obsessing about one thing.
Yep.
Maybe a new video game.
Zooming into a detail that you then realize will never be noticed because it's not going to be printed that large.
True. It's true. But that's 30 days probably for like a cover or like spot illustrations. But if you do like sequentials or, you know, a little bit more stuff, then it really depends on the speed of the artist and, you know, the timing for when you need the product by.
What's the fastest you've ever had a turnaround?
I just had one 2 days.
Holy crap.
But I work with Asian artists, so the time difference really helps as well. But yeah, I just had one 2 days. It was assigned Thursday, and the client it was assigned Wednesday. The client needed by Thursday. I said, hey, what about Friday instead?
Was it the Hive guys?
It's
Was it Hive?
Yes, it was Hive. They had to find, because Hive, when we work with a studio in Thailand, they're very fast because they have like a bunch of different people. So you can make them, but that's the fastest I've ever asked anyone. But I've seen people do a cover in a day because I worked in Singapore. I worked for a media company and they had in-house artists. Amazing. I don't know how they do it, but they would do like books. Well, they would do like one-offs, or I forget what it is called, or one something, that they would submit storylines to Hollywood. And so they needed art. So they would create one art a day to show the clients, you know. So that was pretty fast. But these are all computer generated stuff. But yeah, I've seen people do.
There's got to be like some photo bashing going on in that too. But
yes,
yeah, I've seen some crazy fast.
That's what they said. Yeah. That's what happens. But yeah, the Hive did a 2-day turnaround just recently for me. Amazing.
It's like editorial level speeds.
That was pretty fast. It's the fastest I've ever required an artist, as far as I'm concerned.
Got one here. What challenges and opportunities do you see with managing accessibility features in modern book design, image, alt text, and PDFs, readability, etc.? Honestly, we are looking into doing a lot of that stuff now. We're actually working on it. Was it Todd Crapper had a Kickstarter a few months back? He's one of the books he's converting is They Came From Beneath the Sea for us. So we could actually find out how that's done, because a lot of us have never, like I said, when I started doing this, when I started doing PDF stuff or design, there were no iPads, and so we have people who will complain that the PDF we made in 2007 is not an iPad compliant or optimized document, stuff like that. We're because it came out 4 years before the first iPad did. And, so it's one of those things like we're kind of still catching up on some of that stuff. Although we are trying to do that. I'm trying to
retroactively do this.
Fonts, for people who can read a little bit easier and that sort of thing. And I've heard that some of our books, you can actually, there's a program for visually impaired people that you feed in the PDF and it reads off the text in real time or something like that, I think. But we are looking into it. It's just not really knowing how to do it. It's basically trying to find time to actually find out how to do all that stuff, because the information is out there, but it's not exactly accessible easily. And even then,
can you just resave as with the old files together and then just update and make new PDFs that are compliant? Would that make sense, or does that more work?
I think there's multiple layers you have to do in different versions of things, I think. Now, Todd Crapper's Kickstarter was for creating optimized versions of books for accessibility. And he was converting several different companies' books. And so we threw in the idea of doing They Came From Beneath the Sea as one of those. See how, find out how it's actually done, see how it's done, if it works, how well it works, that sort of thing. And then, if that takes off, then we're like, maybe we'll start getting some more of them done like that,
That'd be nice. Yeah.
It's just one of those weird things, like, like for the longest time, you couldn't even have layered PSDs or layer transparency in PDFs that worked really well up until about maybe 2012, 2013.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
It stopped having those godforsaken flat lines.
Yeah. I was so happy when I was doing the brochure and I could transfer the Photoshop files right away into the InDesign.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this made my life so
do you just play straight PSDs now?
Yeah. I was shocked. I was like, that was the first time I've ever done it.
You could even override your Photoshop layers in InDesign now.
Yeah. Dang. I just remember, when I was doing it yonks ago, it was TIFFs or Get Out.
For the longest time, yes. Then so it was either you wanted to do transparency, you had to use TIFF or an EPS. And for a while there, we were only doing that because when you would do a download PDF using EPS, half the time you wouldn't get the line, the flattening line. And then they've upgraded stuff ever since then. And I'm trying to think who came up with it. Drive-Thrus had a couple people working on that stuff early on, and finally it's at a point where now we're basically you can actually make a really nice looking PDF and it still looks nice in the book. You don't have to do a whole lot of extra work now, which is nice.
Yeah. That was the first time I've done it on the brochure, so I was so shocked and happy. I was like, whoa. So I just kept doing it. I just kept dumping from a PSD file. I just kept dumping it in there. I was so happy. And they did
fun for designers.
I know. It's always good when you learn something new, right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I like what I do. I love my job. And it makes it more fun when you learn something new.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How much coordination is there typically between writers and artists on canon characters? Well, depending on, I know for Essence, we actually had you had to have the splat art done first before we could actually have it done on the cover, because they reference everything. So, but usually if we ever have I would like to say canon characters, we'll try to get that artwork done first ahead of time. A lot of the time, Rich will actually do sketches of them. For Pugmire, he did sketches for every one of the canon characters for both the dogs and the cats. Way back in the day when we did Scion, I think it was me, Rich, Matt, and Craig designed all the people you saw in the book itself. And, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Luckily, we don't have that many. The only time we actually run into a lot of canon stuff nowadays is for the Vampire and the 20th anniversary stuff, which, thank goodness, all that stuff's already there. You can kind of pull from it. Which, if you've looked at V5 Chicago by Night, you will see how much stuff they actually had to pull, because literally every other, there are updates of old characters, which means that Dawkins had me going back into 3 different versions of books from eons past to pull out black and white art for people to convert into color and stuff like that. And it's tedious.
How much do the writers? How much do the writers end up influencing the art? Because I know for regular art notes that I get, there's usually a description of what this character looks like, you know, a Korean woman wearing a hanbok or whatever. But
like Exalted, we let that one's a little more descriptive, because let's face it, art direct 25 to 30 different lines right now. That one's the most unique and exotic one, I like to think. And since again, anime is not my, something I'm as into as I was, say, back in the late 90s. Whereas these guys are, so I kind of like leave it up to them, like, okay. So basically, it's the idea of you get the writer to give you a basic idea of what they kind of want to have in the scene, and then you just hit the artist and go. And sometimes I'll, you butt heads, like, so I'm going. Sometimes, this works well as an illustration, or it doesn't show that. I'm like, works well as an illustration. Let's just move on.
Yeah.
Talking heads is the most boring things in the world.
I usually have a disclaimer on, like, whenever I send, because technically, normally I would, when I was doing stuff for other stuff, not necessarily for Onyx, I usually compress and condense usually the writer's descriptions, because some descriptions I would get in the past would be like, I don't know, it's like 10 paragraphs and it's just one scene. So as an art director, you have to not give that away. You can't give that to the artist, because you might scare them away. So you try to compress, and then in the end I started getting really lazy. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to put a disclaimer in here and tell the artist, look, you can condense it. I said, this is just sort of like a guide for you to think of what that writers are thinking, but of course you can't put a whole battle scene, in like a half a page. So please, as long as you get the feel and you get the essence of what is important, then you can pretty much, do away with a lot of the details that's on here. So, and most of them get it. I mean, most of the artists understand, which is good. But once you read the stuff, it's very scary, because all the way down to like, well, she's wearing this costume, all the way down to, she has a knife. Oh, the knife has inscriptions. Oh, and the knife is actually underneath the table. And I'm just like, oh my God, how are they going to draw that thing?
I think that's one of the things, like once you've been freelancing for a while, you kind of just figure out some writers are good at thinking visually, or like good at sort of just letting the artists do their thing, and then some are not. And I think you want all these things and don't actually think about how it's actually going to fit onto one page or in one image.
I think they feel that the more information they give, the more beneficial it is for the artist. So it's not that they want you to know everything. It's just for them in their heads, like, okay, I'll just give you everything I think what you're supposed to do, and then you can just take away from there. So I think that's pretty much what I think that's their goal.
Let's see. Next question is, what can amateur indie game devs do to make your jobs easier when contracting for art design work? Actually, that's a good one. It depends. Like I said, when I've done a little bit of work for non-OnyxPath companies in the early teens, but I always try to basically tell anybody, it's just kind of, like I did a fantasy Old West game for Hellbrain Press. And like, just kind of, tell me what kind of feel you're going for. For me, throw out a name of a movie or something like that, or a genre of movies, or anything visual that I can kind of like, oh, okay, go.
Yeah, it's easier to see something visual, or if they refer to something visual, as opposed to using words like make it cool, or make it retro, or make it urban, because those words kind of, I can say urban, I can take
a lot of things now.
Yeah.
A mood board, always great. Pinterest, that sort of thing. Yeah,
mood board is good. Yeah, as opposed to like, like words, like prompt words, they don't work really well. But I have a lot of clients who say, I wanted to make it look cool. Oh, I've got one who says, I want it to look epic. And it's like, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
I know.
Well, Well, one of the things was when we started doing the new Trinity books, basically, one of the things I've always asked Ian is what you kind of like, we did the core book, which is modern day. And I said, well, how modern day is it? Is it, 10 minutes in the future, modern day? Is it? And he goes like, oh, it's sort of like that show Leverage, more espionage, still high tech, but, not crazy. I'm like, oh, easy, done.
Right.
Yeah.
And you just kind of go from there.
Right. Anything that's visually, whether it's a texture or a color combination that they are thinking, that helps more than like an explanation, I think.
Yeah, mood boards were fun. I haven't done a mood board since I did level design, so that's been 10 years. So
yeah, for me it depends because I have some clients who get it, I have some clients who don't care, and then I have the other clients who are like, everything in their head they want to express. So
Yeah,
it all depends, really, and it also depends.
One of those.
Yeah, also depends.
I think mood boards are one of those. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's one of those tools that it can be very helpful, but it can kind of like with words, you can also drown in the information that they want to provide. So sometimes if they send like 100 different pictures, that stops being helpful. If it's like 10, that's great.
Right, and also you have to understand what kind of media are you working on? Like, are you working on like a computer game? Are you working on a comic book? Are you working on a role-playing game? So it all depends, like you can simplify a lot on some of these things. And then on other things, you have to really be, I worked with some computer game people and they really want everything in there. And they also want everything correct. Like if you draw, let's say somebody falling out from the sky, they want to make sure that the trajectory is right. And I say, why are you so concerned? It doesn't matter. It's like sometimes when you draw things, it doesn't have to be correct. But apparently they say that their fans or the guys who buy their computer game are so into it that they get so much flack that if they don't do it the right way, they get, the fans get upset. So even the size of a like a camera, they have to make sure that it's the right size or it's in proportion. I was like, really? I was like, who cares? Right?
Back when we were doing the World of Warcraft RPG at White Wolf, I literally had corrections from their art director such as the glint on this metal is going the wrong direction.
Yes, they do that. Yep.
The horns on this satyr aren't quite right. That sort of thing.
Yep.
And it's one of those things I'm going to say, but World of Warcraft, it's fit. Nope, gotta match up everything.
Right.
Yep.
Have a reason. Blizzard does tend to have very, very tight, specific.
Yes, they do.
Art design, art direction.
And their art style is very hard to actually
Magic now these days.
It's like Disney on acid or something like that. You're like, oh.
Yep.
I was gonna say more on the business side of things for helpful. It also really helps to have an idea of what your budget is for your art overall, and what kind of rights, at least on the illustration side, like what kind of rights you want. A lot of stuff tends to be work for hire, but a lot of artists do also prefer to have the right to at least make prints of their own stuff or, their own copyright, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's also stuff like, that company gets to print it once and then the rights to sell the image again revert back to you after a certain amount of time.
Yeah. It also depends on like if you're depends on what market you're in, whether if it's comics, forget it. If you work for like the bigger companies, unless you work for a smaller company that helps you retain creator rights. For gaming, they're very lenient as far as I'm concerned. Of course, everything's work for hire as far as I'm concerned. If you do commercial work for anyone, it's considered, if you get paid, it's work for hire. So
not so much in like regular like Hachette, Macmillan, Big Five book publishing. A lot of times the cover artists keep the copyrights over their work.
Oh yeah, most of them are like I said, it depends really on the companies and and also the usage. Like I know the artists could sell some prints maybe, so they allow that. Or they can print it in their own art book and they could sell the art book. But there are other companies that won't let you do that.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is there a product line for which you would love to release an art book, almost a coffee table book, like 50% plus art. Actually, yes, Chronicles of Darkness, the entire, I might say maybe the entire line, at least the blue line, the Mortals books, because I always thought some of the best stuff, some of the best pieces ever that we ever did back in the day were out of that first core edition book. There's the, I can't remember the name of the guy who did the fulls for World of Darkness, but it was just some fantastic stuff. There's the young lady archaeologist investigator sitting there with the magnifying glass, and behind her you see something kind of creeping up. And of course, you get Sam Araya's spooky haunted wheelchair in that one.
Yeah.
But
So
you don't know what's going on there, but you know something bad's going to happen.
I think that was around the time when I was interning at White Wolf, and so I got to
Probably.
see a lot of that stuff while I was, adapting things and digitizing things and whatnot. So, really
Very much probably.
Yeah.
And then the other one would be, we already done one for werewolves, and we won't say that ever again. I wouldn't mind seeing one for another Exalted one, but a much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a kind of from the first edition to now, sort of thing, where it's. I've seen a couple of Blizzard's art books for World of Warcraft where they've done that, and it's about 6 inches thick. And it weighs about 20 pounds.
They have an army of artists out there, though. Like
yeah,
army.
Yeah.
And
What was the artist? So, I can't remember her name now, but she did a lot of stuff for the Chronicles of Darkness stuff, the early times. I think her last name was Wilson. It was like CW, I want to say.
Oh, Kathy Wilkins?
Yeah, Wilkins. Yeah. Always really liked her stuff.
I love her stuff. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2019.
Oh, she did? Oh, shit. Oh, I had no idea. Wow.
One of those just horrible things. And like I said, this last 10 years have been horrible. William O'Connor passed away. People you've met at shows and hung out with. It's awful.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look up her art now and be sad.
Don't be sad. She lives on forever with her art.
That's true. I
used to get Kathy to do as much stuff as humanly possible. She did a lot of stuff for was it Requiem?
Yeah. I think that was probably where I saw most of her work.
I think Pauline got her on. Started her off on that Time of Judgment wrap-up book. It had Wraith and Changeling and Hunter and all that stuff in it back in the old days.
How many books have you done, Mike?
Layout-wise?
Yes. Give me
in the 400s at this point.
I know, I did not. Probably more. That's amazing.
I've been doing layout design since 2001. Of course, shortly after I started doing that, I retired from actually doing artwork. So, yeah, this 2023 marks my 30th year in this industry.
Wow.
Oh, I think there was one more question, and then
there is.
We might not have time. Yeah, it was above. What one thing do you wish you knew when you first started out in the industry?
I don't know. It's kind of weird. I kind of didn't start out in this industry. I just kind of got into it.
Yeah. Moonwalked backward.
I started at White Wolf simply because my girlfriend and her best friend worked there in the warehouse. And I needed extra money, so I would work there part-time. And then it just kind of evolved.
I think for me, probably, I guess it's less industry specific and more just art specific, but just the idea that at least I'm never really satisfied, and that doesn't actually change no matter what you start working on or how good you end up getting. I'm never really quite satisfied or happy with my work, but that's sort of like that chasing the goal that you want to get. Even if you get there, you're still kind of you, and it's cool to achieve those goals, and it's good to have the goals. But at the end of the day, you carry you into wherever you go and whatever you work on.
I can't think of anything.
What's an average workday like for you? How many projects are you working on a given day? How many calls with who? How many projects am I working on a given day? Well, you can look at the list on the Monday meeting notes every week. You'll have an idea of how many I'm working on every day. Usually I'm juggling about 2 or 3 projects a week. And it's basically, you know, I try to keep it as a 9 to 5 deal. I've been trying since I've been working remote for
Let me just
2011. So I'm just gonna,
hold on. I need to choose something.
Maria
Maria's
disappeared into
close.
space.
Sorry.
She has been subsumed by the void.
But if you work from home, yeah, I read a bunch of stuff after I started working from home. And basically, like, you know, try to maintain a 9 to 5. What you consider like a regular day.
Yeah.
And you know,
I don't really keep a regular day. I'm very bad at like partitioning myself in time, but I usually end up working at night. But to be honest, right now I have a day job doing slot machine stuff. So any freelance I do, it tends to be one-offs. So I usually only have the one thing at a time that I work on, and the time I'm not working on, you know, the slot machine stuff. So basically, I take it on if I'm interested in the project, and is basically the entire impetus for taking freelance. Yeah.
as far as calls with artists, I have not had an artist call since about 2003. Most of us either communicate via email or some Facebook Messenger, some Gmail chat. And, you know, there are some that still call me, like Jeff Rebner occasionally will call me because, you know, Jeff Rebner is, you know, the dude that I have idolized since the early 90s when he started working on Werewolf Second. It's kind of sad, you know. It's, you know, back in the old days, I remember people were on the phone constantly. Rich was constantly on the phone with artists. That's with Larry back in the day as well. And then, you know, when email became a lot more prevalent, that just kind of stopped.
You're shy creatures. The phone is a stress point.
Yeah. For me, it's like I don't have a schedule. Not one nice thing about doing freelance is because you can work anytime, anywhere. I mean, it's bad and good at the same time, but especially if you're working on multiple projects, because normally when you're, normally at work, you just you have the luxury of working on just one project and all the components of that project, you know, until from the beginning to the end. But as freelance, you have all these different companies, different clients, and in as much as you try to schedule everything, of course, the schedules never work, you know, because there's always going to be something that's late or missing or whatever. And because you're so flexible time-wise, I mean, sometimes there's really no holiday offs for us, you know, because the holidays is when you can actually just work and concentrate on your work and not be at meetings or talk to your clients or whatever.
Weekends and holidays.
Yeah, and because you have that because you're flexible for some reason, because you sometimes I wake up at 1 in the morning and then I'll sleep at 3 in the afternoon, you know, but you know, so for me, I can control the projects that way because you're fluid, you know, so, and thank God, most of the time, the projects seem to sort of like fall in place anyways, you know, it's like sort of like the nature of the industry, the nature of your work, that you could always say, you know, you plan something, it doesn't work. And when you don't plan something, it works. So you just have to.
Well, inspiration doesn't hit on a clock. It's just, you know, sometimes it hits in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Or 3 a.m. when you're trying to do something else, like go to sleep. Or
people don't understand that. They think like, oh yeah, I gave you 3 months to do this. It's not really the work. You kind of already know. If you've done this before, you already know how long it's going to take you. It's that inspiration that you're actually waiting for because you don't know when that's coming, you know? And but once you get that,
write it until it's done.
Yeah. Once you get that, that's it. You're there. It's a waiting game.
I mean, sometimes you just have to sit down and grind through it. And I mean, honestly, the work that comes out like that gets done, but it's not as good stuff when inspiration strikes. But that's part of being a working artist, right? You just have to get it done regardless.
Yeah, I was working on a bunch of layouts for a client, and it's a new client, and sometimes new clients it's tricky because it would either work or not, right? Depending on what the mindsets are. So I submitted 6 designs for a cover, and then in the end, I thought of something. Like 5 minutes after I submitted it, I thought of something. I did it in like 3 minutes, sent it out. That's what they chose. They chose the one I did in like 10 minutes and 5 minutes because all of a sudden I was like, oh, why don't I do this to that one? And so I did it and I just sent it out. And I kind of like, it's kind of cool. So I sent it out for some miracle. That's what they chose. So all the 6 covers that I spent like 3 weeks working on just didn't matter. So you really have to be flexible, and sometimes you sometimes you can get lucky.
Well, I think we're at time now, so got to wrap it up. But thanks everybody for the questions, because honestly, I have no idea what to talk about unless somebody throws something at me at this point. So, but
This
thank you very
was fun,
much, Maria.
Thank you. I had fun. And it's nice to meet you, Priscilla, finally.
Yeah, it's nice meeting you as well, Maria.
Oh, you'll be hearing from Maria a lot more soon.
Yay.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I'm so excited about how well Essence is doing.
Very much so.
Yeah.
But I guess if you have any other questions about the art process or whatever, just always feel free to comment on the Monday meeting blog, because I check it occasionally. I know Rich checks it every day, so, and we always find out about stuff. So,
cool.
So thank you very much.
I'm also actually in the OnyxPath Discord right now. So
are you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think it's just like at Priscilla. So, so if you have any questions about the illustration side of things, feel free to ping.
And if you have any questions for me, you can ask Mike.
Delegation.
I know. I'll just hide behind Mike. Like, Mike can answer all your questions, and he can ask me, and he can tell you. So,
thanks to the coronavirus pandemic, I have plenty of me to hide everybody. So,
cool. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Are we good?